1. I'm a 20-year-old female who lives in a suburban neighborhood with my family. A few years ago, we had new neighbors move in next door. At first, they seemed okay, but then they turned out to be complete party animals. I'm talking partying 3 times a week, blasting loud music till 2 a.m. Over the past year and a half, we've had multiple confrontations with our neighbors over petty stuff. I previously made a post on Reddit about confrontations with our neighbor. I'm shocked it blew up as much as it did, and honestly, I almost forgot about the post entirely up until a few weeks ago. Here's the story. Our neighbors were having another one of their super crazy pool parties, and it was driving everyone in the neighborhood crazy. The police couldn't do much, but we would make a noise complaint, and the police would show up to give them a warning. Things would get quiet for maybe 30 minutes, but then the partying would start again. Over time, some neighbors began to give up, and eventually some even moved away. This was especially upsetting for my mom when one of her friends, who lived on the other side of our neighbor, moved away due to our horrible neighbor. My mom had finally had enough. Once the party finally seemed to wind down at around midnight, and guests started leaving, my mom marched straight up to the female owner of the house, lying Sally, she's a pathological liar, and warned her that we'll start calling the cops on them more often if they don't stop. Of course, lying Sally and her party guests laugh and start taunting my mom, which led to an ugly screaming match. Luckily, I had the common sense to record all of this just in case, and thank God I did. At some point in the fight, lying Sally screams at my mom that she's going to beat her up. One of our neighbors called the cops, which I don't blame him for doing so. I was getting worried for my mom since lying Sally kept threatening to F her up. The cops came and everything got peacefully resolved. It wasn't until the next morning I reviewed the video and remembered that you can file a restraining order against somebody for threat of assault. Now here's the thing. I knew that filing a restraining order against someone can cause that person to maybe lose their job, or make it very difficult for that person to find a future job. I knew from the sticker on the back of her car that she works in daycare. If I were a nicer person, I could have let it go. Too bad I'm petty. So we filed the restraining order, took my neighbor to court, and after showing the judge the video, he was immediately on our side. Especially after she had initially tried to lie and claim that she'd never once threatened my mom. She didn't know I had video proof. The judge granted us the restraining order, and we were jumping for joy. Meanwhile, lying Sally wouldn't stop crying and pleading with the judge to rethink his verdict. The real kicker? I made an anonymous call with a friend's phone to the daycare center where she worked and let her boss know everything. A few days later, I noticed that she had removed the sticker on the back of her car. I'm pretty sure she was fired, because she started staying at home almost 24/7. Her car almost never left the driveway. Also, the best part, the crazy loud parties finally stopped. It's been radio silent for a whole month. You can bet that during Christmas, our closest neighbors dropped off a lot of cookie tins and chocolates as thanks. You might be wondering how the judge was able to see the video when phones aren't allowed in the courtroom, and this is true, and I'll explain. We were told to have our phones completely turned off, but once the hearing started, lying Sally straight up lied to the judge, saying, "I never threatened her." I told the judge I have video proof. The judge allowed me to show the video on this Elmo projector thing, and the whole courtroom got to watch the video. That was the nail in the coffin for lying Sally. I also have video proof of her kissing someone who is not her husband. There are several reasons why I haven't exposed her to her husband as a cheater yet. 1, I'm not sure if she and her husband are in an open relationship. 2, they have kids. I'm a child whose parents almost went through a divorce. I know how horrible that can be. I'm hoping lying Sally takes this as a sign to turn a new leaf, because she also saw that video during the court proceedings. She knows I have proof of her infidelity, which is probably another reason why their house has stopped the excessive partying. 3, I also kinda hate the husband. He's always been extremely rude, so this is my petty revenge against him. And 4, I'm holding onto the video as blackmail just in case the partying does start up again. 2. This happened at a 24-hour gym in Hong Kong. Since the gym is only staffed for limited hours, the gym goers are expected to do the cleaning and replace the weights after each use of the equipment. This is even written in the terms and conditions. Nonetheless, some of us slip on this rule once in a while, some because they're too exhausted and forget to do so, while some are just lazy. Usually a reminder from fellow gym members would suffice to make things right. But there came a group of foreigners with 2 blonde guys and an Asian girl a little more than a week ago. They didn't replace the weights correctly. The plates were randomly arranged on the rack, even though there are numbers on each bar to indicate what weight should be placed there. The weights need to be replaced correctly, I reminded them in a friendly voice, while helping them restore the positions of the weights. They nodded and went to the next machine, and I resumed my workout. The next day, the same group showed up again while I was working out, and they picked a chest press bench just in front of me. A couple of minutes later, they left the chest press bench in a mess and went to the dumbbell zone. "Hey guys, the weights have to be replaced correctly," I said with a sterner face as I walked to them. The tall blonde guy, Larry, replied, "Do you work here?" "No, but..." I tried to reason, but Larry kept dismissing me with, "Have a nice day." I saw them laughing as I walked away. Maybe they were confident that no staff members would tell them off because most of our fellow citizens barely speak English. Plus, it's not staffed at the time of our workout, so there is no way to get a staff member to talk to them. 2 days later, I went to the gym a bit late and didn't see Larry's group. It was unstaffed. I walked into the staff room, and there was John working on some paperwork. I waited until John finished the document he was working on. "May I help you?" John asked plainly. There were a group of people that didn't replace the weights. I told them to, but they wanted the staff member to talk to them. I shrugged. "Do you remember when and where they were working out?" To my surprise, I sensed a hint of eagerness, if not excitement, in John's voice. I didn't anticipate that they would be willing to deal with these extremely minor issues. 2 days ago, around 11:30 at the chest press bench. I replied quickly. John made a few quick taps on the computer, looking through the security cameras throughout the gym. A few moments later, he showed me footage on the computer featuring Larry's group. "Is this the group?" John asked. The eagerness in his voice could hardly be missed this time. "Yes," I replied. "Thank you so much. We'll identify their identity from the membership data and ask the chain they registered in to send them an official reminder," John said. "It's been a headache for us having to keep replacing the weights for these people." I never saw Larry's group again at the gym after that day. 3. So I was not the one that came up with this idea, but I am the benefactor of the situation. Every year there is a charity softball game held in our county with rotating beneficiaries. This year all the money raised was to support individuals in the county with cancer. Not to pay direct medical bills, but to assist with all the other costs such as travel expenses, lost wages, etc. There are lots of fundraising opportunities at this tournament, but it is just a one-day tournament, so it is strictly BYOB, as those running the tournament aren't going to get a liquor license. It's run this way every year. The complex this tournament is hosted at has concessions that are run independently from the tournament. This year, the lady who runs the concessions got something stuck up her ass, or something, because she got pissed off and called the cops saying that those running the tournament were selling beer without a license. This was not true, but news of the incident spread pretty far throughout the county. One of the guys, Scott, who is one of the leaders of the tournament, was understandably furious. And so this week there is another tournament being hosted at the same complex by a different organizer. The hosting team has ties to this lady that called the cops. So Scott is looking for a way to boycott this tournament, but realizes that having his team skip the tournament will be generally ineffective. So he comes up with this brilliant plan to hit him where it hurts. Scott and his team, who are sponsored by a local bar, go to every other team in the tournament and inform them they each have a $100 credit at the sponsor's bar, and request teams don't hang out and buy beer at the tournament. The bar sponsoring Scott's team catches wind of this and decides to match the $100, giving each team a $200 tab to keep them from buying beer at the tournament. To be clear, in case anyone is concerned, the tournament we're boycotting is not a charity tournament. Profits from this tournament go to the team hosting the tournament and helps pay for the tournament entry fees, hotel expenses for state uniform expenses, etc. This lady is associated with the hosting team, and the team's manager is an out-of-touch dick that refuses to listen to the input from the rest of the league and just bullies his way as a commissioner. Whenever he goes to tournaments hosted by other teams, he always, without fail, refuses to pay the $2 gate fee, saying that the commissioner doesn't pay gate fees. As a note, these tournaments are not league-sponsored. Teams host them independently, and within the county teams just make it a priority to generally support other county teams by participating in such tournaments. 4. I was a 20-plus employee for an organization with religious ties, in leadership, and the key point person for a lot of things, and pretty good at what I did. There were parts of the organization's religious group's identity that I didn't personally identify with, but felt as though I was making a difference there, generally enjoyed the work, and knew plenty of other like-minded, read what the org would have called liberal employees there, so I was content. In my state, the organization's religious ties make them exempt from several laws. Most relevant to this story, they are legally allowed to make hiring decisions based on and considering sexuality and sexual identity. While the organization had many constituents who were part of the LGBTQIA+ community and supported those constituents, they did not openly hire members of said community. For years, I felt like a part of my reason for being there was to be a support to those members of the LGBTQIA+ community who were constituents in what was not always a positive environment for them. I had an employee who was an outstanding performer. Really, she was my best employee, if I'm being honest. She was a standard setter in every way, an absolute peak performer. I had no plans to leave, but if I had plans to leave, I would have recommended her as a successor immediately. The work she did was important and widespread. It impacted every constituent in the org in one way or another. She was closeted when hired, and through a series of life events, came out after several years working for me. I was actually surprised at the community response. There were some skeptical folks and people who did the common religious praying for you thing, but many people were supportive of her. We lived in that bubble for a couple of years, and then I took a plan to the supervisor of my direct supervisor. She made the salary and title decisions to promote this employee for her exemplary work. The conversation started off poorly and ended with, "Do we really want to encourage her to stay here?" And she knew the type of environment she was working in when she took the job. If she disagrees now, she should leave. I knew in that moment the boss's boss was inadvertently speaking to me. I don't agree, I should leave. I started the job hunt with one main criteria. Found a place that was openly affirming with work that I was eager to learn, and took the job. It's ended up being an incredible fit for me. I love the work, love the people, and surprise, members of the LGBTQIA+ community can both work here and be promoted. I also ended up with a 20% pay increase during my first year, which was wild. While my departure certainly didn't ruin anyone's life, everyone was pretty surprised with my departure. I definitely got my share of panicked, "How did you complete this task?" or "What was this procedure?" calls, and they haven't been able to fill the role since. Anyway, cheers to finding a workplace that's in alignment with your soul. My star employee also got out. She ended up working for my best friend, and got the job because of her strong qualifications, but I did feel good to have introduced them. Happy Pride. 5. This actually happened many years ago now, but I was dining at a restaurant with my friends around 9ish in the evening. Not a fancy restaurant by any means, but an affordable, delicious option that's always open late. It wasn't busy, and there was one very bored waitress who looked to be in her 40s. She put on a perky face and took our orders. Being a picky eater, I asked for a burger with no lettuce or tomato. I had ordered the exact thing dozens of times before with no real issues, but something was off about this waitress. "It comes with lettuce and tomato, honey," she said like I was stupid. Yeah, I laughed, thinking she was just teasing me at first. I just want the cheese, though.
It just comes like that. That's how we make it, with lettuce and tomato,
she said in a matter-of-fact way. I looked at my friends for some sort of help and only received dumbfounded looks in return. I said as nicely as I could. Would you just leave the lettuce and tomato off? I was waiting for her to understand, but she acted like I was speaking nonsense.
Sorry, but that's just how we make it,
she replied, clearly annoyed now.
But if you don't like it, just pick it off, sweetie.
She finished taking our orders while I sat there stunned. Picking off lettuce and tomato is easy enough, sure, but on rare occasions at the restaurant I'd forgotten to leave it off for me in the past. It usually left the bun soggy, and tasting the toppings I disliked, hence why I asked for it not to be assembled that way. And I did everything I could, in my very confused state of mind, to be polite to this woman, especially when I started to wonder if she was 1, on drugs, 2, fucking with me to win a bet, or 3, profoundly stupid. I did end up receiving a burger with lettuce and tomato, surprise, surprise, and the bun was soaked by the questionable-looking piled-on tomatoes. It even looked like they'd managed to add more toppings than usual, and I wondered what I ever could have done to this strange waitress to make her mess with my hunger like that. Did I hurt her in a past life? I asked if I could at least get a fresh burger bun because it was so watery, and she just looked at me exasperated and said,
"This again? Just pick it off. It's fine."
I never made a scene. I never asked to speak to a manager, and I ate my fries and the parts of the burger I liked. I honestly don't really like confrontation, but I did get a bit of petty revenge in the end. On the table, I left her the oldest, dirtiest $1 bill from my friend's wallet as a tip, because you should always tip your servers. But I put the lettuce and tomato on top of that nasty dollar bill with a note saying, "Just pick it off, sweetie." I wish I could have seen her face. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Reddit is Ice Cream, episode 269. No, you didn't mishear that. That's what it's always been called, right? Yes, YouTube is playing silly buggers with my titles again, and it seems they've decided that anything with revenge in the title is automatically targeted as not suitable for advertisers. Thankfully, they haven't gone to all my previous uploads yet, but they have randomly decided that some of my previous uploads were not suitable. The fact that 9 out of 10 of them do get approved when I request a manual review, then that should make it quite clear that it is in fact nonsense. So for the foreseeable future, until this nonsense stopped, Revenge is Ice Cream will be Reddit is Ice Cream. That doesn't work, it'll be RIIC. And now your regularly scheduled outro. This had some good news in it, so I was quite looking forward to uploading this one for you guys to hear it. I'm going to stop talking and let you hear the rest of the outro now. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I almost said videos in this story, and that's just weird. Okay, let's see. Oh yes, I'm getting married. I knew there was something important I had to mention. As you may have, some of you will have heard, my partner Jack and I, also known as Linux, you'll have seen them posting in the comments and also on the Discord, we've decided to get married. They visited for a couple of weeks recently, as you probably heard me gush over and mention, and the timing was just perfect. You know, the moment cropped up and I would have been a fool to let it slip away. So we're getting married. We already knew we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together, so this just makes perfect sense. And it really does feel right, which shocked me because I'd always thought I'd never want to get married. But I guess when you find the person that makes you feel content and happy and peaceful and you know it's right, when it's not difficult. It's not to say there's no problems in a relationship. Problems crop up in every relationship. But you feel like yourself around them. And you feel a kind of peace that you genuinely thought you would never feel, and you didn't know you were missing it until you had it. It's amazing how much you can convince yourself everything's okay when it's really not. Well, turns out I just wanted to be loved. And I found my Jack. And they love me as much as I love them. No question of the day today. I just wanted to share that news with you all. And I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening. And take very good care of yourselves.